Welcome into yet another episode of the Inverted Microphone Podcast. Back after a week off last week as Zach Durasic was heartbroken due to the Micah Parsons trade. Hopefully, he has mentally recovered from then. We don't have Joel Lara with us. He is busy. Zach, how are you gonna be able to fill in for Joel's presence on the show? And also, how are you doing today, bud?
Well, I don't think we could ever hope to fill Joel's absence. It's truly impacting all of us, and it's made my day worse. Joel not being here, it's just horrible. But today's been all right. It's been all right. How have you been?
I've been actually quite bad. My voice doesn't sound it, but I am sick as sick can be. So this is my Michael Jordan flu game of podcasts. I cannot wait for this to be over so I can take a hot shower and lie in bed and wait for the day to end. But that's not how life goes. We've got to talk some ball first. And we have quite a lot to talk about. Premier League obviously has been going on, but the most important thing is the transfer window just wrapped up with quite a lot of news from pretty much everywhere in the world, of course. But the most notable news came from the red side of Liverpool, once again breaking the English transfer fee record, bringing in Alexander Isak for I believe it's upwards of 130 million monopoly money in from Newcastle United, putting an end to one of the more ridiculous transfer sagas we've seen over recent time. Zach, what are your thoughts not only on this deal finally being over, but also the fee presented by Liverpool?
I think the fee is something you just kind of move aside. You pay this premium to get a player like Alexander Isak every day of the week, especially when he's begging hands and knees to come to your club. You absolutely shell out the money. I mean, it is a bit weird because you already splashed cash on Hugo Ekitike and Florian Wirtz earlier in the summer, but I think it's a transfer you have to make if you're presented with this opportunity if you're Liverpool. And on top of that, I just think this is the greed they talk about in the Bible. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting the amount of attacking options they brought in this summer.
I mean, I have to completely agree with that. It's just a bit ridiculous. I mean, Isak is the second best striker in the Premier League right after Erling Haaland. Not really right after, there is a gap. Erling Haaland is one of one. And if there was ever a team to buy Haaland, it'd be twice the fee, I feel like, for Isak. But again, you mentioned the attacking options. They've already brought in Verts. They brought in pretty much the Alexander Isak clone in Hugo Ekitike from Eintracht Frankfurt. That was for around 80 million. They've got Mo Salah, of course. They've got Jeremy Frimpong. They just brought him in from Bayer Leverkusen. There is so much attacking quality in this Liverpool team now where the expectation for them almost has to be to score 3 goals every single game the rest of the season, because you don't spend that much money on this amount of players and not have that production out of these guys.
I mean, their attack's already been ridiculous this season. I think this Isak move just goes to further that, and I think this just kind of transcends them into a different level of football. I'm still very curious to see how they line up. Who do you think lines up at the left wing position? Do you think they still roll out Cody Gakpo, or what do you think their lineup looks like with Isak now?
That's a very interesting question, and it's one that I've thought about a lot. I feel that Cody Gakpo, as good as a player he is, and I think he is quite good. I don't think he's one of the better left wing or one of the best left wings in the Premier League. I think he is one of the best, but not the guy. Um, I think he offers something different that isn't, it's kind of just a 10 that's just been slightly shifted over to the left hand side, not really occupying those main central spaces. With Ekatike, Isak, with other one you play on the left, I would assume it'd be Ekatike. Um, you have much more of a just versatility in terms of, hey, they're gonna get there and they're almost gonna play as a second striker behind whoever the main striker is. I do have to imagine though, you kind of just keep Gakpo in there until either his form drops off, there's an injury. Just because he's there already, I feel like you almost need to keep that continuity, at least in the early goings of the season. Now, of course, this is the Premier League. There's loads of games. They got Champions League on the docket. They've got FA Cup, Carabao Cup. Obviously, that's a ways away. Both those two. But there'll be rotation, there'll be places for them to rotate. And because of that, and because of the attacking depth that we've mentioned, I think they're going to throw out some weird looks because they just have the option to. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Verts false nine at times this year, just because, they're trying different things. And I think because of that, they'll present so much, just, again, versatility is the word I go back to in the final third, that defenses won't be able to cope with that, and they also won't be able to cope with the quality of Liverpool's attack, and it's going to be disgusting to watch if you're not a Liverpool fan.
I agree with you in a lot of those sentiments. I think you keep Gakpo there just for the current moment. You wait till some sort of problem arises, and then maybe you could test out Ekatike down the left. Playing behind Isak almost. You could try Florian Wirtz as a false nine. I like that shout. Not that I think Wirtz would do well as a false nine, but I think with Wirtz struggling, I think Slot is going to move him around the field and try to get some sort of success out of him, try to find what he's best at, because it's clear he's not being used to his fullest extent right now.
And to be honest, I feel like that is a whole nother conversation about Florian Wirtz that we may as well get into. I feel a lot more worried about him after these opening three Premier League games, about his adjustment to the Premier League. And it's an interesting one because, the price tag was what, 115 million, including add-ons, I believe it was. With that price tag, the expectation is almost you need to hit the ground running. And if you don't hit the ground running, you're not worth the transfer fee you paid, all right? And because of this, there's this lofty expectation on him that he just hasn't hit. And I worry that he just isn't physically gifted enough to not make it in the Premier League, but live up to the price tag in the Premier League. I'm sure he'll be a good player in the Prem, but 115 million is a lot for a guy that it seems like is almost always this not smallest player on the pitch, but kind of the weakest in a way. He's obviously quick, but I worry that he just doesn't have the strength to go up against these Premier League defenders, a very physical league.
I agree with that. We were talking last night. We're looking through comps of his from the Bundesliga, and there's just acres and acres of space of open grass to run. There's no two guys playing on him, two guys marking him whenever he's playing down the left hand side of the pitch. There's just people lose him a lot in the midfield, and that's not going to happen in the Prem. So I get everybody who's worried about him.
And the point is like that you raised there is the acres of space. When you're a player that is known for your creativity, and especially when you're a midfielder, there's going to be a defender on you at all times, all right? There's going to be a guy that is going to be specifically assigned to man mark you, and when that guy doesn't do his job, there's going to be another defender to clean it up, all right? And when we were watching this tape of Wirtz in the Bundesliga over the last few years, it felt like there was one guy on him. Wirtz would get past him, and all of a sudden, he's able to play a pass into Frimpong, Boniface, whoever.
Yeah, I don't know if his style is going to translate to the Prem. I've really started to see the red flags go up. The siren sound. I'm very intrigued to see if he can hit the ground running, or maybe he grabs a goal in one of these upcoming matches and that something clicks inside of him. But I absolutely understand the physicality red flags.
What would you say is a successful season from Wirtz in the Prem? Well, I won't count Champions League, FA Cup, Carabao Cup in this tally in terms of goals and assists. It can be a combined number. It can be individual, goals and assists, whatever you want across the 38 games. I'm assuming they kind of win the league just because of the amount of money they've spent this window. It feels like anything but would be a failure. What would you say, again, back to the original question, is a successful individual season for Florian Wirtz?
With the rate he started out, I don't know how achievable it is, but I feel like 30 goals and assists, goal contributions should be expected from him, especially for his price tag. I think otherwise you could start to consider him not necessarily a flop off his first season, but you could start considering him and not living up to his transfer value.
Mhm. I mean that's kind of around where I've put it. I put it a bit lower than that at 25. For reference,
Okay.
last season
Okay.
he had 30 goal contributions across all competitions. The year before, when their invincible season, it was 37. So he's got the ability to reach those high levels. I think 25 is a bit more reasonable. Just given that, again, it's a transition to the Premier League, but the price tag comes with these lofty expectations that he needs to meet.
Yeah, and I was originally gonna say 20. I was gonna settle at 20, but then I was just thinking about the price tag, and I'm like, no, you have to be higher than 20. You have to do better. You have to bring more, even if there's sort of a grace period, like right now.
Yeah, and that is, the main thing with I feel like a lot of these guys that come from the Bundesliga is they have to be given a longer grace period than guys that come from Ligue 1. I feel like Ligue 1 is the league that sets guys up for the easiest and fastest transition to the Premier League. We'll talk about another guy now from the Bundesliga. This one, I was puzzled by it originally. Nick Voltemade, I've seen it pronounced a very different ways by very different people. From Eintracht or from VfB Stuttgart rather, mixing my German clubs up. 23-year-old striker, 6'6", very tall. It's a shame he's not 6'7". It went for what, around 80 million, I think it ended up being. He is a very, very interesting player. The 6'6" frame is just insane. I feel like he doesn't use it to the capabilities that he realistically should at that frame. I've seen German fans call him Volta Messi because of his performance with the U21s. He didn't have the greatest game today against Slovakia. We'll get into that later in the pod. But, what were your initial thoughts, Zach, when you saw this signing? I know the price tag really just kind of raised question marks. But then now that you've kind of had, I think, a week now, maybe a few days, just to kind of let it settle, how are you feeling?
I'm gonna be honest. Whenever I first woke up to that "Here we go" announcement from Fabrizio, I
Wait, wait,
was
wait. I gotta pause you. You woke up to that announcement? The announcement came out about 10:30 Arizona time, Zach.
did
Please
it.
don't tell me. And it was like on a Tuesday or a Thursday. You woke up to that.
I did wake up to that.
Jeez. Someone's locked in here.
Yeah, and I just remember being astounded by the price. I mean, you have to take in the circumstance of that Newcastle is in right now. You have to take in everything prior that's happened this summer. The sale of Alexander Isak, which to this point wasn't complete yet, but you have to take
It was
everything
all
into
but
account.
complete.
You have to take everything into account when talking about the price tag here, because obviously 80 million is a steep price. It is very steep, especially for a guy who you're essentially buying off potential. But after letting it sit with me, after watching comps of his, after looking through his statistics, I see what Newcastle was looking at. This is far from a Rasmus Højlund Manchester United situation. I think there is some serious potential here with Voltemade. I think the sky's the limit almost. Like we were talking about earlier. It's like he's kind of new to his frame. He has his issues in the air despite being 6'6", but maybe that'll come with some development. I mean, maybe that'll come with
It's
growing into his body.
fascinating. I think he will because, I mean, you look at the technical ability of him. There's a reason German fans have jokingly but still called him Volta Messi. He is constantly dribbling through defenders. His hold up play as a target forward for Stuttgart is incredible. And it's something that I think will bring another layer to this Newcastle attack, be his ability to play as a target forward. I mean, also, looking at Isak, looking at the profile that Isak was, where he's not just a poacher, he's very versatile. He can move in off the left. I think, we talked about how we talked about how Hugo Ekitike. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Hugo Ekitike is, pretty much the not poor man's Alexander Isak, but you know, just that second step below bringing in Isak. Now you get out that this Volta made. I feel like this is a very very similar profile, and I think that Newcastle is going to be one that it ages well. I think he's only 23. He's only had one good season, not good season. That's subjective. One 10 goal season. Um, he's very very good. I feel like he's got a lot of potential. And again, you bring in Johan Visa alongside him. I've got thoughts on Visa. We'll get into those in a second. But this is a really good signing for the future, especially given that Visa is 29.
I mean, yeah, the more I've looked into Voltemade, the more I get excited to watch Newcastle. Just, which is
Yeah.
not something I thought I'd say going into this season. I mean, so far they've struggled to bag goals at a consistent rate this season, which is understandable for a team playing without its number one guy. It's their go-to striker. I think this could be a serious signing, and I think there's serious upside to this Newcastle squad now.
So you think that Newcastle is not only going to be fun to watch, but you might want to take a trip to the beautiful St. James Park to watch this exciting Newcastle side?
I can't say that, but our good buddy and friend Joao Lloyd Jr. might just be tempted by that.
He might be. He might be. But we'll get into Johan Visa now because we've hinted at it. 45 million for the Brentford striker. The goal scoring's there. I know he's a pure poacher. I don't feel like though I ever fully clocked how much of a just pure poacher this guy is until, a couple days ago where I watched all 32 goals he scored over the last two seasons. 12 in the 2023-24 campaign, 20 last season. And, you know, 2 seasons ago, the 23-24 campaign, there were a lot of pretty good goals that not weren't just tapping it in over the line. They were well taken 1v1s. This past season, 20 goals, 19 of which came in the Premier League. A lot of them very, very ugly goals where, it's a pure striker's goal. It's ones you need to have to win games and for Newcastle to get into the Champions League again. But how sustainable is it? Because it's these goals that are just weird. There's a lot of headers off corners and throw-ins, and there's a lot of goals that come from, just chaos on the back line. I worry to an extent that you won't be able to create pure chances for him. Does that make sense?
No, I absolutely understand that. I feel like if I could use one word to describe Johan Visa last season, it would be opportunistic. He,
Yes.
he was he was extremely opportunistic, and I wonder how he's going to slot into this Newcastle side going forward. And I'm very curious to see what Johan Visa we see next season. Do we see the 23-24 campaign where he's playing more in attack, where he's just scoring these absolute bangers, or are we going to see the 24-25 Johan Visa who's Mr. Opportunistic, Mr. Always there, when a play breaks down and the ball is in front of an open net.
I think it is a very interesting question. I also think, we talked about how Liverpool would play with their attack. Is this a team where you can almost see Visa and Voltamade play together? Because, we talked about the difference that they bring. Visa much more of a kind of pure finisher, Voltamade very versatile all over the pitch. I know it would probably leave a hole in midfield. You'd have to take out probably Joe Linton and have a double pivot of Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes. But is that something that you could realistically see where you use the best of both worlds?
Yeah, I think it works out in an interesting way. I mean, this Newcastle side flat out just their biggest issue this season. They need goals, and they went out and they got two guys who are different profiles of strikers, but the bottom line is they bag goals. They score. They put the ball in the back of the net, and I think that will bring an interesting wave to Newcastle's attack if they start it, to see if they start both of them or if what kind of formation they wheel out there.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be fascinating. Obviously, we won't be able to see it immediately as we've got everyone's favorite thing in football, the international break. Newcastle's first game, though, out of the international break might be one of the better ones you could have. They've got Wolves at home. Granted, they immediately follow it up with Barcelona coming to visit them in the Champions League, but hey, Wolves at home, great game to build some confidence. Looking more at some other Premier League transfers, we'll talk quickly, not quickly, we'll go a bit in depth on this one. About one that didn't go through. Mark Gray to Liverpool. It seemed like it was done. It pretty much was done. The Here We Go was released by Fabrizio Romano. And then all of a sudden it came crashing down. Olivier Glasner didn't want to let go of Guehi because they couldn't bring in, they didn't want to bring in, or they couldn't bring in rather, Igor Jesus from Brighton. They wanted to bring him on loan. He failed his medical, but he did find a move away anyways. So I don't know what Palace was really doing. Did they fail it on purpose? Who knows? Igor Julio. Mixing up the Igors. Igor Jesus is the Nottingham Forest player. Igor Julio, they wanted to bring him in. They couldn't. He's now at West Ham. It's weird because Mark Guehi is a talent that you almost not should have cut your losses. That's not the right word, but you should have profited on because he is one of the better center backs in the Premier League. There's a reason why he's consistently in the England camp year after year, even though center back is the weakest position for England, but doesn't matter. Um, he They could have sold him for like 60 odd million last year. Newcastle came in and offered, and granted, Newcastle can't really sign anybody. They didn't get that deal done. You had an offer for I think it was 30 million, 35 million around that range to sell him to Liverpool. And now you're likely going to lose him on a free at the end of the season. I don't understand this business from Palace's perspective. I don't understand it from Liverpool's perspective trying to go out and get this guy. It's a very weird move in general, and I think the fact that it fell through benefits one person only, and that's Mark Way.
I totally agree in that sentiment. I think this absolutely benefits Guehi. I think next summer he'll have his choice. Should he reach that point without leaving, he will have his choice of teams. There will be plenty of clubs coming in and requesting his services. But personally, I think Liverpool make a double back in January. I think there's no shot they don't try at least make an attempt to sign him in the January window. I think it all depends on if Palace are able to bring in another center back to replace him. And again, it's a very complicated situation. I absolutely get what Ollie Glasner wanted. I absolutely understand, you know, going to the lengths that he did to ensure that he has the right talent, the right players, the right profiles to succeed at his job. But I think if you're Palace, you want to get that sale across the line, and I think you probably try to do some convincing on Ole Glasner's part. Make some promises backstage, promise to bring a center back in January. But like I said, it's a very complicated situation.
It is, and you raised the point of Liverpool might try again in January. If you're Palace, you're getting 15 million out of that. And this is a guy who realistically is worth north of 50. And you're going to get 15 million when you sell him if you sell him in January. And to me that's just bad business. I think, with Eze they kind of realized, hey, value's peaking now. He's this guy who's peaking later in his career. And you need to make the profit at some point. With Guehi, you've lost it. Unless you sign him to a contract, like kind of what happened with Mateus Cunha when he was with Wolves, where he, could have left on a free. Instead, he resigns his contract, and now Man United paid a fortune for him. You can't really do that with Guehi, I fear. I just don't feel like the demand will be there for him. I did see one scenario and one rumor posted by Transfer Market that apparently Real Madrid is interested in bringing him in rather in January or in the next summer. And to me, that would be the funniest outcome. Rejecting Liverpool and then going to Real Madrid, regardless of if there's a fee or not. Seeing Liverpool fans' reaction to that on Twitter will be absolutely hilarious because, Trent Alexander-Arnold just left Liverpool for Real Madrid. Liverpool fans not happy in the slightest by that move. That would be just hysterical to me.
To me, it'd almost be as funny as seeing Caicedo snub Liverpool for Chelsea. I mean, it's a very similar situation, I'd almost say, and I quite enjoy that if Madrid scoop in for Guehi and steal him out from under Liverpool's noses. But again, it's there's so many moving parts in this situation. I'd be very curious if Palace makes some absolutely insane demands or propose an absurd contract and some last ditch attempt to regain value in this situation. But again, I highly doubt it just because I think there will be so many suitors who will offer him that and more, that money and more. I mean, more specifically Madrid. I mean, we've seen they need the help on the back line, so it'll be an
And
interesting
they're
chance to monitor.
desperate too. They're very desperate. We've seen them. They kind of had this Newcastleitis, I'll call it, where they're going after all these targets, and for some reason they just had no pool this summer, which for Real Madrid, that's a huge issue. I know it's a new era there under Xabi Alonso, but Newcastle, you kind of expect them to struggle bringing in these big names because, well, it's Newcastle. They're not that big of a club in terms of the world football landscape. Real Madrid is arguably the biggest club in the world. There are very few you could really argue are bigger. And for them, the struggle is very interesting. We'll turn to another big club that is struggling, Manchester United. They made a couple moves to get rid of some guys, some permanent, some temporary, that will eventually become permanent. We'll start with the first one, the biggest one, Alejandro Garnacho to Chelsea. It's a very weird move from Chelsea's perspective. It just feels like they're buying the buy. It's I thought that Chelsea would have had a pretty good window had they brought in Xavi Simons. Obviously he goes to Tottenham. This move, though, bringing in Garnacho, I feel like I don't want to say it sets the project back because I feel like that is a very harsh overreaction, but it doesn't move the needle forward, that's for sure.
I just don't understand it. I mean, I think you already said it. They're just buying to buy at this point. I don't know what kind of value Alejandro Garnacho brings to the squad. I think, if anything, he can only serve to be a negative in the locker room off the pitch. And I just don't understand from a Chelsea perspective why you make that move. I just going from Xavi Simons to signing Garnacho in the summer. You got if you're a Chelsea fan, you have to be in the gutter.
I exactly agree with that. I mean, I'm fully shocked though that Xavi Simons ends up at Tottenham. We'll get to that just now before we go into the rest of the United moves since we're on it. It's weird to me that he ends up there because it felt like every big club was linked to him in one way or another. And to me, when a player signs for Tottenham, I immediately think, hey, what's wrong with him? Okay. What, like, in the nicest way possible, what is wrong with them? And I just think that with Xavi Simons, why are these other big clubs rejecting him? It's weird to me. I don't understand it. I think he's a quality player, but again, what's wrong with him?
I agree with that. I like the sentiment of essentially what's wrong with him if he's not going to these bigger clubs, to all these other clubs, but he somehow falls to Tottenham. I don't understand how that happens. I really thought he was essentially a lock to go to Chelsea, and I thought that would have been a needle moving signing had Chelsea got that deal over the table. But I like the signing for Tottenham. I think it's a good sign. I know you're bringing up, there has to be some sort of issue there, but I think he is a excellent ball carrier, and I think that's something that Tottenham have needed. I think he's a ridiculous ball carrier. His non-penalty goals last season were ridiculous for his position, and I think he'll find some level of success with Tottenham. I think this is a great signing.
I agree. My worry though is, because it's a Tottenham signing, I feel like I have to be negative on it. Because again, it's Tottenham. What's wrong? And to me, one warning sign is I fear that the goal scoring numbers from the Bundesliga aren't sustainable. I mean, we already talked about Wirtz's transition and how a lot of Bundesliga products have a difficult time adjusting to the Premier League. I mean, obviously Erling Haaland's the exception, but he's the best striker in the Premier League. It's difficult, and I worry that that's not sustainable. I think the rest of it is. I will get into a little tangent rant here. Tottenham fans, when Tottenham announced Xavi Simons, they posted the picture of him, and Tottenham, the club, captioned it, "Let it all work out." A direct shot at Eberechi Eze signing for Arsenal. With "Let it all work out." The song was all over every announcement. I don't understand that. Simmons is not a boyhood Tottenham fan. Eze is a boyhood Arsenal fan. He was never actually going to put pen to paper with Tottenham. I just don't understand it. But that's a conversation that I'll go more in depth on another day. I'll spend a whole hour talking about it. Back to United. Højlund to Napoli, Sancho to Villa. Which one do you want to talk about first, Zach?
Let's go ahead and talk with the first one you mentioned. Let's go ahead and talk about Hoyland signing for the champions of Italy.
He's back to Italy. It's his only 10 goal season with a single club. He's had a 10 goal season before, but it with Copenhagen and Sturm Graz. He split it halfway. Back in Serie A, he's still young. He's what, 22 now?
22.
21?
22.
Yeah, he's very young. He's still got time to rectify what went wrong with Man United. And I've said this before. I feel like strikers peak later. You don't need to buy that young of a striker at 20. You can kind of let them wait. You can wait a few years and then see where you're at. Just because they'll blossom and you can get the best apples, the best bananas, whatever you want from the tree. All right, the best flowers, whatever. I'm no gardener, so don't ask me what grows from what. But this move to me, bringing in Hoyland, was just obviously never worked out. But getting back to where he was clearly most comfortable in his career feels like a spot where, hey, this is, you can maybe, fulfill your potential. He's got good players around him. Scott McTominay, Billy Gilmore. There's some very good players in there. And I think that's a good move for him.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by this, by Napoli signing him. I think it's kind of a bet on him succeeding like he did before in Serie A. Maybe finding his level, kind of much like Anthony did whenever he was on a loan to Real Betis last year. I'm very intrigued by this move. Like you said, I like the people around him. I like him playing with Scott McTominay and Kevin De Bruyne. I think he'll get some good looks on goal, and I think he could succeed. I think there's a real chance. I mean, looking back on the transfer, looking back on his tape from Serie A, there's not much to be impressed by. It leaves a lot on the table, and you struggle to see why United decided to splash that much cash on a guy that young. But who knows? Maybe he finds success at Napoli.
I forgot that Kevin De Bruyne is at Napoli. He's one of the best creators ever. I mean, that move has just completely blanked my mind. That may as well, in a way, be like kind of like a guy going to Saudi or a guy going to MLS at the end of his career, where I just will never think about you again for the worst way possible. It's awful. But, I mean, for Napoli's perspective, they kind of need a striker. They have Lorenzo Luca on loan from Udinese. He was with Ajax a few years back. They have Romelu Lukaku, who is decent enough. That feels weird to say about Lukaku. He's injured until I believe it's October, so Hoyland's gonna have to hit the ground running. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating for sure. Sancho to Villa. That's next. I forgot about Anthony to Real Betis. That's just how many guys have left United. We'll get into that after Sancho. I think Villa's a good spot for him because I mean you looked at Rashford last year with Villa where it kind of rejuvenated his career, and you look at the second leg against PSG. The fact that Unai Emery subbed him off was ridiculous, but it was one of Rashford's best games in years. And I think this is a chance for Jadon Sancho to do the same. It's a better situation than Chelsea because Chelsea has so much attacking talent that getting a game there is always going to be difficult. Um, but being with Villa, they don't have as much depth. They're going to be playing for the big games still. I'm intrigued. I still think there's a player in there with Jadon Sancho, but can it come out?
And like you said, I think Villa's the best spot for him fit wise. I think he's going to get playing time. I think he's going to get it early. I think that he could hit the ground running there. Maybe there's still something in there. We saw some flashes at Chelsea. We always see flashes with Jadon Sancho. It's just the consistency. It's the week to week consistency, and can he have a better attitude week to week? And I think that's just from a United perspective. What United is most glad about is that they don't have the drama with him anymore. I mean, this is the last year on his contract, so he will be a free agent once this season's up. And I think Manchester United are just happy to be rid of that situation. I mean, I feel like it became very awkward there towards the end. Like they didn't even give him a number at his locker; it just said Sancho on it, and it was all the way in the corner too. Like it felt like he was an outcast almost.
Yeah, and it's sad to see because Sancho was really the wonder kid when he was with Borussia Dortmund the first time, and after leaving City, it felt like he was the one destined for the top from that England generation, and it just never ever come through. I mean, he only has about 20 odd caps with the England full national team, 3 goals, 3 assists, or 5 assists rather. 6 assists. I completely miscounted. Maybe it'll be 7 assists next time I say it. Um, we'll see. It's fascinating. Again, if he hits the ground running, it's great. If he doesn't, you're not gonna. I don't know. I just don't even know how to really put words to it. Anthony to Real Betis. For Anthony's perspective, it's probably the best possible move. I know he had the move potentially lined up. I keep seeing these rumors. I use air quotes because people have been saying, "Oh, Bayern Munich was in there." He said himself that they offered doubled his wages that he was going to get at Betis, but he had to honor his commitment to Real Betis. I mean, he rejuvenated his career. I said that before with Rashford at Villa. I keep using that word with Betis last summer or last winter when he moved there. It was needed for him because he needed to get out of United. The price tag that was spent was just ridiculous. It was, a bad mistake by Eric Ten Hag. And it's an end of an era. And I'd argue that it's more so an end of an era.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment absolutely. I mean, just the price United paid for the original transfer from Ajax, just astounding, just ridiculous. Even at the time, I couldn't believe that Ajax just absolutely took advantage of United in those transfer negotiations. But I think Anthony has really and truly found his level. We've seen him play for United, and the Prim's just clearly too fast and too physical for him. He clearly cannot break down his man in the Prim, which is something he could do in La Liga. He clearly can play against these La Liga guys. I mean, we saw him play against big clubs in La Liga like Madrid and Barca, and he just doesn't look the greatest. So I think Batiste is truly his level, and I think he's found a fan base that loves him and a city that loves him. I could see him spending the rest of his career there, to be honest.
I think he's got a little too long left in his career to say such a thing. But yeah, yeah, I definitely see him spending a very long time in Betis. Next United move because they just can't stop making moves. Send Lamens from Royal Antwerp. Definitely Not the right way to say it, but I'm American, so we'll say it in an American accent. I'm intrigued. I think he has a great goalkeeper, but he's only had 68 full first team appearances in his very young career. Goalkeeper, much like the striker position, is a position where it blossoms later, and they kind of have, unlike the striker position in this sense, they have goalkeepers have longer careers because they blossom 26, 27. They can go on to 36 almost. Um, I think the stats are there. It's a need for United. Losing out on Donnarumma sucks. Obviously, that probably would have been best case scenario. I can't imagine Donnarumma going to United because of what competitions are United in? The Premier League and FA Cup. That's all they have to play for the rest of the season. And they'll have to be one and done in the FA Cup, and they'll just be playing for the Premier League, where who knows what will happen. I I don't know. What's your thoughts, Zach?
I think Lamens is a good buy, especially for the price range that United spent. It was a bit richer than I would have went, but I think it's fine. I think it's a position of need, especially if you've watched United play this season. Just Onana and Bayender are not the answer in goal for United. They're fairly clearly not been the answer in goal for some time now. I just hope for United's sake that they don't rush Lamens into anything. I don't think he's a guy with his age that you should throw out there and kind of feed to the wolves almost. I think you've got to let him get some starts in some less meaningful games, let some less meaningful matches,
Does
because there's not
United
a lot
have that though?
there's not a lot left for United at this point. But still, I think you have to try to alleviate pressure when giving him chances. I mean, we saw per his xGOT numbers, he's saved the most goals on target in Europe last season. That's no easy feat, especially at his age. I mean, despite the level not being that high, I think there's good fundamentals there. I think there's stuff to build off for Lamens, and I think he really could be a serious keeper for United going forward.
Before we go on to the next part, I just looked at United's next 5 games to see, when it was the meaningless game. We've got a Manchester derby right after the international break. They then got Chelsea at home before Brentford away game, Sunderland home. Then Liverpool away. A very, very difficult 5 game stretch, which honestly makes the Brentford and Sunderland games must win. Which we'll see. We'll see. Now, real quick, we're going to go on to international break and the Prem standings. What's your winner and what's your loser of the Premier League transfer window?
I don't think you could pick a winner aside from Liverpool. If I had to give a shout, I would give Tottenham shouts. I think they had their best window in some time, bringing in both Kudus, bringing in uh, I'm completely blanking, bringing in Xavi Simons, and I just think this squad's been kind of revitalized under Thomas Frank. I think I'd consider Thomas Frank a part of their transfer window at this point too. But Liverpool are far and away the winners of the transfer window. I don't think you could put it any other way. You don't break the English transfer record twice in one summer and not come away as the winners of the summer. I mean, that's just not realistic.
And your loser?
My loser, I would have to go with Brentford, really and truly. I mean, they brought in Dango Watara, who is a signing I like. They brought in, I want to say, they brought in Kelleher. Is that how you say it at Brentford?
Yes. Yeah.
And but they lost Brian Mbumo and Johan Visa, who was such a majority of their production last year. They also lost Norgard to Arsenal as well, and I just think that's too much to lose in one summer. I think that's quite frankly a catastrophic summer, and one that could see your club get sent down, losing that much in one window.
I have to agree because, Brentford I honestly, to be honest, I don't like the signing of Dango Atara. I think the price tag is too steep. I think the stats are good, but again, I don't like the price tag. I think it was in excess of 40 million. They brought in Jordan Henderson, Reece Nelson as well. Some of the ins I like, but I don't like the fees, and you're never fully going to replace Brian Mbomo and Johan Visa. For my winner and loser, I'm not going to copy you because it could be Liverpool, it could be like I agree with all three that clubs that you mentioned. I'm going to actually list the same club as winner and loser. It's going to be Arsenal. I think they won in terms of the amount of money they spent and the quality of players that they brought in. As we mentioned him, you mentioned Christian Norgard adds depth. They brought in Kepa as a backup goalkeeper, filling that depth need. They brought in Noni Madueke, which mention what you want about him. They needed a right wing. Saka gets hurt almost immediately into the season, unfortunately. And now you've got a good right wing replacement, something they didn't have last season when Saka got hurt. Victor Gyökeres, Martin Zubamendi, they addressed so many holes in the squad that they needed to do, and they did a good job doing so. Why they're the losers? They had a terrible job selling players. Zinchenko out on a loan to Nottingham Forest, no obligation to buy. 10 million for Sambi Lakanga to Hamburg. They did it. Fabio Vieira went there on a loan as well. There is so much dead wood in this Arsenal team that they needed to do a better job selling guys, getting rid of some of these players. Jakub Kivior, they only got a it's like a 2 million loan fee. They should have probably sold him and brought in more money. They loaned out some of these guys that just don't need to be loaned out anymore, like Carl Hein. He needs to be sold. And then uh, the youth pathway, they just didn't you loan out enough youth kids. And to me, that's why they're the loser as well. I think that'll wrap up our transfer window talk. We're gonna have to kind of speed through this final segment and a half. Daniel Levy out at Tottenham after 24 years. I didn't realize he was there that long, to be honest. I knew he was there a
Neither did
long
I.
time. 24 years, long, long time. Tottenham fans, I think in one hand you can be upset, one hand you have to be excited. The hand you have to be upset in is Daniel Levy revolutionized that club. I mean, he pretty much, there really wasn't a big six, all right? City before the oil money and Tottenham before they kind of bolstered their squad. It wasn't a big six. It was a big four of Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United, and Chelsea. And even then, Chelsea, you could argue, wasn't really in there. It was just the three red clubs. Daniel Levy revolutionized Tottenham. They built a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stadium that can only be so beautiful because it has a Tottenham badge on it. But the frustrations with Tottenham fans were the signings. They were just never, ever there. And they were losing players when they were trying to recruit year after year. It felt like at any time they'd go for a player, oh, like they wouldn't go there. I remember one time there was a quote. I can't remember from who now it was, but it was pretty much, oh, you think you're playing good, and then you see your name's linked to Tottenham, and you're like, oh, I must not be playing that good. So on the recruitment side, it's going to help Tottenham, I think. But on the business side, I don't know how you can replace somebody like that, if that makes sense.
I agree with a lot of those sentiments that you said. I think the timing of it is extremely weird. After the window that they've had, the success. I know they weren't successful in league last year. That's obvious. But they come off winning a major trophy for the first time in who knows how long, and they have this wonderful window. Consider like arguably one of the winners in the PL of the transfer window, and then he gets canned. I don't understand the timing of it. It's very weird to me. But I think Tottenham fans have a lot to look forward to. I think they have seen the recruitment throughout the years, despite the window that they've had. You've seen the recruitment throughout the years, and I think there's a lot for Tottenham fans to look forward to.
Have to agree with that. We'll now do a little mini recap of the Premier League table. 3 games in, which is just a lot of games. They've played so many games, I don't even think it's like 10% of all the way. It's not 10% of the way through the year. Uh, there's not too much you can really take. Wolves look bad. West Ham look bad. A lot of teams look bad. Liverpool, 3 from 3. What do you make of that? 3 wins
I
from 3.
don't think there's much to make of it. I mean, their biggest matchup in terms of talent was obviously Arsenal, and they passed that hump. Whether it was off a set piece, you could argue how impressive that was, but that's still it's 3 points in the bag, and I think Liverpool have looked like the out and out title favorites that they should right now, I mean, you break the British transfer record twice in one window. You have to win the league. There's no bar. You have to win the league. It's non-negotiable. And I think so far they've shown the ability that they have the ability to win the league.
I agree with that. I'll pivot to Arsenal because that's next we have on the docket. I think that people are overreacting to this game against Liverpool and coming out and saying Arsenal didn't look to play football. No, it was just a very cagey match. That the only reason Liverpool won was because of one of the Premier League goals of the season. It was, again, such a good free kick from Dominic Szoboszlai. You honestly couldn't put it more in the top corner if he had tried. I saw people talking about, hey, is David Raya doing enough there? He's not saving that even if he stood there with his hand up. Right where that ball's going to be. He's predicting it. I just struggle to, overreact to Arsenal's performance from that game. Now, we'll talk about another team that, are they overreacting? Are they underreacting? Is it time for United to hit the panic button? I know they just beat Burnley. It looked like they won the Champions League the way they celebrated it. 97th minute goal from Bruno Fernandes to win the match penalty. What are your thoughts? Do you think, Ruben, could he go before Christmas, or is that an overreaction?
I think he absolutely could go before Christmas. I think these next 5 games, as we discussed earlier, are going to be very telling. They're going to be extremely telling. I mean, how does he use Lamens? When does Sheshko finally start for United? There's so many questions. There's so much gray area for United right now, and I don't think the tactics behind the squad are good enough. I think the talent's there now. I think last season United had a talent issue as well as a coaching issue. Now a lot of if United fails to find success, it is on Ruben Amorim, bar none.
I agree with that. And to me, I feel, and I've said this before to you off camera, the players that United's brought in this window, really last the 3 window or 2 windows that Ruben's had, have been perfect for a manager to come in and play a 4-3-3. Ruben trying to kind of shoehorn these guys into his own 3-4-3 system just doesn't make sense. My worry when United initially brought in Ruben was they were gonna buy guys that were molded for a 3-4-3, which is rare to find, but guys like they were gonna find two creative midfielders, two tens, not guys like Cunha and Mbomo who can play off the left and right respectively. They found, these wingers, these elite wingers, and I think a transition to a 4-3-3, whether it's under Amorim, which I don't think it will be because he's just seems to be far too stubborn, or under a new manager, will be very, not seamless, but will present themselves with a lot of better opportunities. Close out the show. We've got a few minutes left. Let's talk about the international break. 3 weeks into the season, why on earth are we having it this early? It's ridiculous. It's flat out ridiculous. I understand it's World Cup qualifiers, but it just it disrupts the flow of the season.
Yeah, I can't help but agree with you. I struggle to understand why it's this early in the season. I get it's a World Cup year. I get World Cup qualifiers have to happen at some point. But 3 matches into the season, 3 weeks into the new year, what are we doing? Just what is the scheduling behind this? It just disrupts everything. I mean, I was starting to get the feeling, club football was back, and it's been taken away from me.
It's been taken away from you. That's right, Zach. We've got Champions League next week. We're going to talk Champions League for the next podcast episode. And these teams that are supposed to be preparing for these big Champions League games aren't together right now. I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I can say it 20 more times. I just won't ever understand it. But talk about the games. There's nothing meaningful in half of these games because the bigger team wins half the time. Except, well, not even half the time, 90% of the time. But Germany didn't. They lost 2-0 to Slovakia. Apparently, or not apparently, it was apparent that it was a very bad performance from Germany. I was a little shocked to see the scoreline. I know it's away, and away games can be a little bit tricky, but I mean, it was just full of bad performances across the pitch from various different players. A lot of guys who just didn't play well. I mean, you look at the starting lineup, and it's like, oh, these guys should be playing 10 times better. And I'll give Slovakia credit. They've got Martin Dubravka in goal, former Manchester United legend. Played 2 games, both of which in the Carabao Cup, and then Milan Skriniar. He used to be with Inter Milan, PSG. Before, after that, they've got Stanislav Lobotka. It's not like there's some scrubs, but Germany cannot be putting up such a poor performance, especially when they have the bulk of possession, the bulk of shots, the bulk of expected goals. They just can't be doing that.
I think it's a ridiculous match for Germany to go out there and drop. I mean, I get what you're saying about the talent that Slovakia has. There are some names in there that are just of that caliber, but you look through Germany's starting 11. There is no reason this squad should be dropping matches. They, just bar none. That's inexcusable for a squad with this much talent.
I saw this earlier today. This is the second time ever, which sounds absolutely ridiculous, that Germany has lost a World Cup qualifier away from home by more than 2 goals. The other time was in the early 2000s to England. They lost 5-1. That is an insane statistic. Um, I honestly can't believe it. Another thing I can't believe is that CONMEBOL's qualifiers already end by the end of this window. They play 18 games, which is unreal. All 10 confederations play each other twice. The usual suspects are going to qualify. Argentina is going to be there. Uruguay, Ecuador are going to be there. Brazil is a little bit shaky, but not really. As long as they win or draw today against Chile, they should be there. Colombia's probably going to be there. Paraguay's going to be there. It's really a race for the playoff spot. Venezuela's in it currently. Could be Bolivia. It could be Peru. Who really knows? But CONMEBOL, the way their confederation set up qualifying, there's never really any surprises.
I agree with that. And it's honestly shocking to me that their qualification is wrapped up by the end of this window. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But I think it's very top heavy. I mean, I think CONMEBOL has been like that for some time now, and I think it will continue to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when Brazil really ever gets their stuff sorted. I will, look at some of the other games in the world, some of these other random games that who is watching them? Russia, 0-0 draw with Jordan. For some reason, Saudi Arabia played North Macedonia today. What on earth? I just found that out seconds ago. In Czech Republic. Oh my goodness me, this is the most random game you could ever find. Saudi Arabia won 2-1. Good for them. I had Thailand beating Fiji 3-0 written down on the script in the semifinal of the Kings Cup played between Thailand, Fiji, Iraq, and Hong Kong. A very strange assortment of Asian nations. But what do you make of Saudi Arabia playing North Macedonia, Zach?
I mean, I don't think you could name a more random matchup than if you tried. I honestly, I don't think you could. Especially, where did you say it's being played?
Czechia. Ooh, here's a more random one for you tomorrow. Romania plays host to Canada.
Where
That's
it located?
bizarre.
Is it located at a random location? Is
It
it
is
bonus points?
unfortunately not. It is in Romania.
Okay, okay, that's one thing, I guess.
It's still
It's
so
never beating it's
strange.
never it's never beating Saudi Arabia and North Macedonia in
Here's
Czechia.
a random one. Here's a very random one I'll give you. This is probably a year. This was probably the March window, February window of last year. So February 24. Curacao played Hull City. They played Hull City, and they played another Turkish team a few windows after. The only reason the Hull City went, I found that out, and because Jerome Margarita, former Phoenix Rising player, played in that game, and it's just utterly absurd. Would you go to that game? Curacao Hull City, if you could.
I think I have to attend it. I mean, could you imagine that the memento for your memento app?
Oh, absolutely. I think that would be the memento that I flex the most in my life. Like, the Big 12 championship game, some Rising games going to an Arsenal game. No. Whole City Curacao. That's just
I think you'd
incredible.
have to frame it. You might have to print a picture up. Maybe I wish they still did physical tickets because I would absolutely frame that ticket.
I mean, they do in England for some games. So, that if you had a physical ticket to Curacao Whole City, I can only imagine that's worth millions and millions and millions. I mean, that's probably worth more than a Champions League final ticket. Um, I'm only saying that because I don't see many Champions League finals anymore at all, actually. But that's gonna wrap it up for this Inverted Microphone podcast. Hopefully, we'll be back next week with Joao Laura. If we're not, we'll be talking Champions League football. That's pretty fun. Without him, if we are, we'll still be talking Champions League football. Regardless, you can follow me on Twitter at Reese11 _ Zachariah Dorosic. Where can they follow you on Twitter?
At Zach_Dorasic on Twitter.
All right. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, give us a follow, 5-star review on anywhere you can listen to this podcast. Except this podcast probably won't be posted on Apple or Spotify today because Joel's not here. That's his job. I post on YouTube. So I will fulfill my duty. It is a beautiful game, but it is way more beautiful when you get tickets to go see Whole City play Curacao. Good night.